From Nutrien Ag Solutions, I'm Senior Atmospheric Scientist Andrew Pritchard with your Canadian Prairie weather story for Wednesday, January 8th, 2025. Happy New Year. We'll get started here again with our weekly video updates. We'll talk about the Canadian Prairie today. We will resume the updates for the U.S. next week. That'll be on Monday, January 12th. We'll get started with the updates there across the U.S., but just kind of easing back into the flow here. Hope you had a wonderful holiday break. Looking forward to get it started here as we head through what's going to be a cold January across the prairie. We'll talk about the details here, but in the near term, we've got some rounds of light snow moving through the areas, the prairie, I should say the provinces here over the next few days. Around moving through right now, parts of southern Alberta into southern Saskatchewan. Bigger area of light snow slides through as we get into the weekend. Temperatures trending much colder as we head into the middle of January, and then as we look at to late January, early February, the pattern looks cold and active across the prairie. A lot of opportunities for at least some frequent doses of light snow. Maybe we'll cash in on a bigger storm system or two as we get in there, but this is certainly a good look for a cold, snowy pattern across the Canadian prairie. Now we'll start off looking at the infrared satellite picture here across North America. Looking at the flow here, we've got a big ridge of high pressure just off the Pacific coast here. Storm systems coming up over the top of that and then kind of diving in across the prairie. This is really the pattern that we've seen for much of the winter, what I was talking about before we left for the holidays and what I'm talking about as we come back here. So a little front, a little disturbance moving through the prairie right now, bringing some precipitation to parts of southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan today. That'll move on into the northern high plains of the U.S. as we get into tonight and tomorrow. And then there's a bigger disturbance across the Pacific that's going to come over the top of that ridge and then move on through the prairie, bringing more snow and another shot of colder air as we get into the weekend. Look at the radar here again early on Wednesday morning. Light snow moving through the area. We see maybe the potential for some mixed precipitation here, maybe some sleet mixing them in there as well as you get into parts of southern Alberta where temperatures are a little closer, if not a few degrees above freezing there across that region. We'll look at those temperatures again. You see 2, 3, maybe 4 degrees across parts of southern Alberta, closer to freezing and then below freezing as you make your way into central and eventually eastern Saskatchewan. So temperatures right around that freezing mark. Look for light wintry mix of precipitation to continue moving through the area. We'll time that out here again, exiting by the end of the day today. This is as we get into Wednesday night. Getting into Thursday morning, should be a quiet day across the prairie, save for maybe a couple of flurries in southern Alberta. Take it into a relatively quiet Friday as well, and then it's late in the day Friday. Look for that snow to start expanding across central and southern Alberta into central Saskatchewan as we get into Friday evening. This is your Friday overnight period. Getting into Saturday morning, snow starts tapering off as we get into probably Saturday night into Sunday morning. This will be about 6 p.m. Central Time on Saturday evening. Still some light snow likely falling along the Alberta-Saskatchewan border, down near the U.S. border of Saskatchewan and Manitoba as well. So a couple of days of some active conditions there, some snow falling across the region. Again, all supported by a pattern that looks like this. Big high over low setup here across the west. Really extremely dangerous fire weather situation here across southern portions of California. We have ongoing fires in the Los Angeles metro area, so extremely dangerous conditions across parts of southern California. As you make your way across eastern North America, cold air being kind of tugged in across this deep trough over the North Atlantic. And then we got the big ridge across the Pacific with systems coming up over the top of that. Again, these little clipper systems, they bring a shot of cold air and some light snow with them. Here's this little ripple in the flow that's moving through the region right now. Present day, that'll be Wednesday. And then as we kind of move this forward, you see the next trough that dives in here as we get into, this will be Friday, into Saturday as we just talked about. And then the ridge rebounds there. As we get into early next week, this will be kind of Monday, Tuesday, January 13th, 14th. The ridge rebuilds there. But we got some transitioning happening here as we get into the middle part of the month, the development of a much larger trough across California, one that's going to probably result in a longer lasting cold chill here, and then maybe the chance for some snow across the prairie, maybe a more meaningful dose or two at some point. But if we kind of break the next 15 days up into 5-day windows, this would be your next 5 days, so January 8th through the 13th, it'll look like this. That trough to the east, the ridge to the west, northwest flow over the prairie, shots of cold air, light doses of snow as systems ride up over the top of that ridge. This will be January 13th through the 18th. Very similar pattern, but you notice the area of upper level of pressure developing across portions of the southwest U.S. We still have that ridge west, trough east look with northwest flow over the prairie. But then as we get into January now 18th into the 23rd, we've really we've kind of phased together that trough over the southwest U.S. with the larger trough across the Hudson Bay down to the Great Lakes. So now we just have this very deep trough that kind of runs from the Hudson Bay down into the southwest U.S. Really strong northerly jet stream flow across the prairie. That's going to really accelerate the flow and the transport of some bitterly cold Arctic air across the prairie and down into the northern and central United States. So the last half of January going to get off to a very cold start. Kind of animate the next 15 days, those temperatures. Again, we get waves of really milder air coming in across the Pacific here, followed by shots of cold air. The temperature is really fluctuating over the next 10 days. Before days 10 to 15, we're likely going to establish a much larger mass of cold air across not just the Canadian prairie, but down into the northern tier of the U.S. as well. Now, what's going to accompany that as we talk about precipitation, let's go ahead and bring it back. We'll look at a wide view of the next 15 days. So getting it started, again, a light wintry mix across southern Alberta, southern Saskatchewan as we head through the next 12 to 18 hours. A quiet Thursday before the last half of our Friday. We see that next clipper system, a little bit more of a robust clipper system, but a clipper nonetheless comes diving down across Alberta into Saskatchewan, eventually into southern Manitoba as we get into Friday night, Saturday morning. This is your Saturday night, getting into Sunday morning. I mentioned those snow flurries likely kind of persisting through the day on Sunday. Meaningful snowfall done, but flurries, cold air on Sunday, going to be a very Arctic-like day. Kind of fluctuate, see that next, kind of nudge of warm air as we get into the early part of next week before, as the ridge kind of reestablishes itself before another clipper comes in toward the late part of the week. So it's kind of this pattern of every 3, 4, 5 days, we get a clipper diving across the region that brings a shot of cold air, some light snow to the region, and then we get into the back half of January, likely trending toward a much, much colder pattern in a widespread fashion. So initially, not a lot of snow that's going to be accompanying that really robust area of cold air. It's going to be an Arctic high. Those don't come with a lot of moisture. It's going to send our temperatures well into the basement, well below freezing. Likely dealing with some extreme cold across the region as we get into the middle part of January. Just kind of eyeballing it right now, it looks like between January 17th through the 24th, probably when we see the coldest air there during that week, Jan 17 through Jan 24. And right now, no sign of heavy snow during that time frame. Would be maybe on the back end that we would look for some systems to come in here. But right now, this pattern sends a lot of cold air across the prairie. This would set up the potential for what we call nor'easters, kind of running up the east coast of the U.S., kind of riding that gradient of the Arctic air, where we've got, the Arctic air intruding. And then down here, we've got the warmer Gulf of Mexico air. So we can get a really tight temperature gradient down there, really fast jet stream flow, and we can get these storm systems that really wrap up. They don't bring much to us initially across the Canadian prairie. So cold first, maybe more loaded with snow as we get into the back half of January. But this is really kind of the problem with this pattern. If you're a snow lover, there's chances for snow. You look at this map, it looks kind of at first glance like there's a lot of blue on there, but we're talking about a lot of light snow. Just every 3 to 4 days, these chances for light snow. And there's a couple ways to illustrate this. First of all, we'll look at the next 10 days, the probability of picking up 3 inches or more of total snow. You see a lot of holes in there where some of the higher elevations are picking up some more significant snow, but a lot of real estate across the prairie where we're talking about anywhere from a 0 to maybe, on the high end, 40 to 50% chance of picking up 3 inches over the next 10 days. And then I think this illustrates it best. The probability of picking up 1 inch or more on the left, the probability of picking up 6 inches or more on the right. So as you look at the map on the left, just, widespread red across the region. So just about everyone has the chance for snow to fall over the next 10 days and accumulate, at least in minor fashion. But then when you look at the probability of getting a half a foot or more over the next 10 days, pretty darn low. So a lot of folks are going to see snow and shots of cold air over the next 10 days, but the ones who are going to see significant accumulating snow, you are the minority at this point. We look at the pattern, though, mid-January through mid-February. Again, a lot of evidence that we'll be going into a colder pattern, and that one that, should support at least clipper systems, if not with the potential for some more significant snow as we get into late January and early February. That's kind of speculating at this point. What I've got to hang my hat on right now is a lot of cold, some incoming Arctic cold, and some light doses of snow, at least at times. You look at the temperature forecast here again, mid-January through mid-February, a lot of cold air likely, coldest across British Columbia, parts of Alberta, into Saskatchewan here. It is going to be very cold as we get into especially that January 17th through the 24th time frame. And if this pattern sets up with any sort of persistence or longevity, it could be a very cold finish to January and start to the month of February. So here's your next 10 days in Calgary. Again, you see those temperatures kind of just wobbling. Highs above freezing for the most part over the next 7 days or so before the bottom falls out there after January 17th. Very similar look here in Edmonton. Saskatoon, you're riding that wave. Again, look at the highs. -6 today, -5 on Friday. I'm sorry, these are a day late there. -6 on Thursday, -5 on Friday, -19 for the high on Sunday. But you rebound heading into the early part of next week before the basement, just falls out. The bottom falls out as we get head into the 17th, 18th, 19th time frame and beyond. Regina, similar look. Same thing here in Winnipeg. Hope you have a wonderful day. Talk to you again next week.